Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items, discussion of each item, and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. All right, so welcome everyone. I did not ask anyone to do an inspiration today, but if you're feeling inspired, feel free to speak up after we do the roll call.
All right, hold on. I'm just admitting a couple more people here. Always going to do that before you do the roll. There we go. Okay. I will start off with committee members. Jerry Glazer.
You're muted, Jerry.
Was that Jerry Glazer? Couldn't tell.
That was, yes. Thank you. Alex Goodman.
I'm here, thank you.
Dina Allen.
Yes.
I saw. There you go. Okay, good. Joshua Somane.
Yes, thank you.
Kenna Lee.
Here.
Lisa Pierce.
Here.
Deborah Burns.
Here.
Sunali Sikand.
Here.
Woody Hastings.
Here.
Jasenia Garcia, and she did let me know she was not going to be at today's meeting. Councilmember Rich.
Present.
Councilmember Gurney.
Here.
And Kathy Ottinger. I do not see Kathy here today yet.
Great.
And that is it. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. So do we have any members of the public who would like to speak to about anything that's not on the agenda? I actually don't see any members of the public here. I guess Phoebe counts. So we'll move on to statements of conflict of interest. Does any member of the committee have a statement of conflict of interest regarding agenda items today? No, good. So planning department report.
Thank you. Let's see, a couple of past events. As you all know, the council had the first reading for the gas station ordinance a couple meetings ago, and they at their last meeting adopted the ordinance officially, so it goes in effect in 30 days. And that was I think when it was at the council, it was a pleasant 20-minute no no opposition. Everyone was on board, so one of those fun projects to bring to council. So thank you, CAC, for putting that forward, and Councilmember Gurney for your leadership. We have a few upcoming items. They did not, the council did not get to a few items, so they are being rescheduled for the May 3rd agenda. That includes the zero waste CAC merging item, the standard conditions of approval. I think I noticed that that's more of a technical document at this point. And a new item from the local road safety plan presentation. There will also be a groundwater sustainability agency presentation. So, you know, in regards to the transportation group and safety, there are some crosswalks and intersections being examined for that, as well as other safety elements. And so that'll be presented. And then the groundwater sustainability plan that regional agency has been working on for the Santa Rosa groundwater plain. The May 3rd meeting is starting at 5 p.m. just because the council's been pretty busy with agenda items, and so they want to make sure they have a little bit more time. And then I do have one other item, which is the Living Peace Wall, which is across from the plaza, kitty corner, on the same side as throughout the cinema. The nominations for those will be, it's consent item, but they will be up for council approval as well. On the May 3rd, talking today with Micah Galati of who leads that project as a community member. Their opening ceremony they anticipate would be, I believe, the first weekend of September-ish. So it's not public and confirmed yet because once the nominees are confirmed by council, then he needs to contact all of the nominees and make sure they're available and whatnot. So flexible, but it'd be in a early fall, basically, for that ceremony. The Planning Commission last night did talk about the environmental and scenic open space as it relates to the cement batch plant. That's the 384 of Morris, which the Barlow has purchased, and gave some input to staff regarding the level of environmental and scenic open space study that we require for those properties along the Laguna. So staff will be moving forward with arranging that. We do have, let's see, a few housing projects that are going on. The Habitat for Humanity, which is 4 townhomes on the vacant lot just south of Masonic Lodge and across from Safeway. We have received their submittal, and actually the resubmittal on that project's now complete. So we are doing the analysis to prepare that for what will be Planning Commission and then City Council review of that project. And again, that's for, we anticipate they would be moderate income, 3-bedroom family homes, structured as townhomes right in downtown. The Woodmark project was submitted on April 4th. That's the 84 unit. I believe the Energy Group or Tor Allen was talking with them about their all electrical potential for that project. That is an SB 35 project. So it's a little bit of a weird process. I'm happy to talk to anyone who has questions about that further and get them more info. Staff is reviewing that. All the documents for that are available on the website, Planning Department under Special Projects, if anyone is interested in that. And then the Huntley Square 10 unit mini townhome subdivision will be going to design review in the middle of next month. So a lot of stuff going on in the Planning Department, but that's sort of a glimpse. In terms of climate action work and movement on that. For the upcycle art projects, I just want to say I was able to authorize the additional outreach that Holly is doing that you had requested for that this year. A couple updates from the budget subcommittee, and I want to thank both Kenna and Lisa for sending me the list of projects and initiatives that the Climate Action Committee subgroups and working groups are considering. That was very helpful, I think, in my discussion, and I think Diana was aware of those as well. So that was helpful since she's one of those subcommittee members. In terms of the outcomes of the climate action components, I had asked for additional outreach dollars for Holly Hansen to support this group as well as the Public Art Committee. That was cut in about half, but it wasn't cut all the way back to what it was last year, which would have been a quarter. So, so we do have some budget, but next year we will need to be a little bit more cognizant of, or continue to be cognizant of how we're using social media, that Holly needs to coordinate for that. The climate action initiatives, we had requested $15,000 as a placeholder, and understanding that, placeholders are a little bit difficult for council, for some of the council members. They did keep it at a $5,000 budget, with the understanding that anything that the Climate Action Committee would want to do for those initiatives would still require council approval. Your recommendation, like with the gas station ban, you recommended it to council was approved direction to move forward with it. In that case, that was about a $5,000 or $7,000 effort. And I was able to do that in my existing budget this year. I'm not anticipating that next year, but at least there's something in the budget. So far, council still needs to review and approve all of this, but there is $5,000 in the budget for those types of initiatives. And then with the knowledge that, yes, council would need to approve moving forward and budgeting, allocating that for that. And then the grant writer, and I want to thank Stephen Pierce I don't think he's here today, but he did attend the budget subcommittee meeting, which I think was great. That was the last item. Council asked a number of questions and received public comment from a couple of folks, including Stephen. And they are going to be taking that up again and continuing that conversation. They do understand that it's a critical aspect, and Diana might be able to actually provide a little bit more. Actually, I don't think I can ask you to provide comments on this because we have a third council member here. So I'm gonna, yeah, exactly. So I'm not gonna ask Diana for comments, although normally I would ask her to maybe, but they did express an understanding that departments do need that throughout the city. And Stephen was able to speak to that as well. And so they are continuing that conversation at a future budget committee. That schedule is a little bit in flux, but I can send it out to folks when that's formalized. And it's likely to be late next week at the earliest, possibly the next week. And I think that's it for me, unless someone's got any questions.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Carrie. I am realizing that I skipped our review of action items. So I'm just going to review those really quickly from last meeting. The transport working group was going to start working on a proposal for our response to the micromobility presentations. All the working groups were asked to send in funding priorities to the funding working group. And we got some, as Carrie mentioned, we were able to pass on for her to use at those budget meetings, and then people attending the budget meetings if they could. So that's it for our action items, and we will move on to city council report.
Sarah, would you like to start, or would you like me to?
Well, if I can, I'll just do the highlights, Diana. I think you'll have more detail than I'm going to go into, because Carrie's added a lot already. I want to just say that we've received presentations from Ives Pool, always successful, the only public pool operating in the West County with great statistics. We also received a report from our relaunch consultant. There's some exciting information there. They're hoping to achieve visible, measurable results downtown rather quickly. We agreed to the recommendations proposed by the committee for the unhoused. That's where I'm hoping Diana might fill in a good bit, and looking forward to a town hall meeting, probably sometime mid-May, I think, from that group as they wind up their work by the end of this fiscal year. Also, we discussed a permitting process for RVs and decided not to do that now and not to explore it. We approved a modest raise to parking fees throughout town. And as Carrie has mentioned, postponed a number of business items to the next meeting when we will be starting at 5 o'clock. Also, I just want to note that while the budget committee is meeting, remember that the full council, a vote of 5, approves all authorizations for expenditures. So remain hopeful. Diana, help us with the unhoused. You had a long list of recommendations there, I think 7 or 9 really detailed ones.
So I have a couple of comments to kind of supplement there, but going to the budget process specifically, we are still in the midst of the budget process, as Sarah said, and I'll reiterate, the budget committee is, our task is to look at the budget and then submit a recommendation to the council for the full council to review and make a decision. Our council, as we all know, is very active in their engagement and involvement. So no one assumes that whatever the budget committee comes forward with will necessarily be the final budget. The other piece that I think everyone should be aware of here, as you think about proposals for next year, is there is a mid-year budget review process. And if it makes it a lot easier for a mid-year budget review if there's already a line item in the budget. So you'll see that that's what the budget committee is doing in many instances. You may end up with a dollar amount that wasn't the amount that you would have, that you initially proposed or that Carrie proposed on behalf of the Climate Action Committee. But the point is the line item is there. And then that provides you the hook to have a mid-year budget review opportunity. It also, no matter what is in the budget, there is nothing that prevents the Climate Action Committee or anyone else from proposing additions to the budget for specific initiatives during the year. So just want you to be aware of that process. I wanted to share with you a couple of events coming up that the Zero Waste Sonoma board is announcing and that I'm hoping we can participate in. July 24th through the 30th is apparently the North Bay Zero Waste Week. And there is an event already scheduled in Cloverdale. I'm hoping that we can get Sebastopol on that calendar with Zero Waste Sonoma so that we can get their engagement during that week. Secondly, there are Fix-It clinics that really seemed to call to me when I thought about this group that Zero Waste Sonoma is setting up. One is in Santa Rosa on May 14. So again, just keep that in mind. There's a way that we can reach out and engage with our community. I'll see what I can do there. The electric vehicle info that the chief of police received from various members of this committee, I know he's taking into consideration. So thank you for doing that and your initiative in getting that done. I wanted to give you 2 dates coming up. One is June 14 at 4:30 p.m. That's the summit, the second summit, Sebastopol Summit, and I'm sure environment will be a topic there. And I will be very, I expect that many of you will receive contacts and invitations to participate there, and I hope that you will consider that. June 18, actually this Sunday, is it's this Sunday, is a Ukraine fundraiser. So please go to Community Market noon to 4. Chris Archambault is sponsoring it, organizing it. It is noon to 4. All proceeds will go to Ukraine, and Jim Corbett is offering the music up. And then finally, June 18 on your calendars is scheduled for a city celebration that will be organized through the relaunch program that the council member Gurney just mentioned, and that should be super fun. On the request from the unhoused, we really were looking at requesting that the city council continue to support successful efforts. So in a nutshell, because I know that we're going through a lot of time here, the idea was to continue to support the Park Village proposal, our support for our outreach worker here in Sebastopol through West County Community Services, continue the police chief's efforts to put together a mental health response team. And he's looking at partnering with another jurisdiction, maybe Santa Rosa, in a year or so, and to continue our efforts to provide porta potties and that sort of support as needed. And then finally, to continue to try to make sure that the RV Village has a future home somewhere, because we are in a temporary 1-year arrangement there. Those were the key pieces. I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but that kind of covers for me. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Dina.
I'm going to put in the chat 2 events so far that Sebastopol has for that Zero Waste Week you mentioned. I'll put them in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the July.
The Zero Waste Week was July 24 to 30. Is that what you have too, Dina?
Great. All right. So we're going to move on. Thank you, council members, and for that report. And we'll move on to our regular agenda. And so the first thing is just reviewing our work process and goals. We've been to, oh, Woody, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Heather. What's the date for the summit?
The summit date is, I'll put it in the chat, but it is June 14, which is a weeknight. I think it's Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. at the high school cafeteria.
Thank you.
All right. So we are 1 year in or more than a year into our process. And at the beginning of forming this committee, we decided to break into work groups and to have a level of function that way. There was some discussion of how often we should meet. For instance, we thought we would start with every 2 weeks and then potentially move to a monthly meeting. And that hasn't, our agendas have been very full. It hasn't felt, at least from the chair perspective, like that was the right move yet. But since we have been meeting for over a year, it seems like time for us to check in and just review both what's working and what we might want to see change. So I've had requests, for instance, for more time to do kind of grounding work, and then requests for like, why are we spending our time doing these inspirations? So, feel free to weigh in at any level of, whether how we're spending our time in the meetings, how we're constructing the agendas, what we could be doing to make this Climate Action Committee as action focused as possible. And then the other piece of the discussion, which would be the next piece. So I'm going to just go around and ask everybody to speak up, like first, what's working well? And then we'll go around again and say, what could we improve? And then the last round will be the climate action framework and how, so Phoebe's working diligently on this project, and we're going to have this framework and helping us have a bit more understanding of what's next, where do we see it going? So having people weigh in, and I'm hoping Carrie would be willing to join that round too, and maybe lead off that round on, how do we see this document that she's working on moving forward into the future? Because that will help our guidance at this point will help her craft what she's doing with the document and help us have an understanding too of, how are we going to move this forward? Because we don't get to keep her forever. So, I'm just going to, hopefully it's okay if I just call on people the order you are on my screen to ask initially what's working about this committee. So Woody, I'm going to ask you to start.
Well, okay. I think just sort of the collaborative spirit has been working well. I do also think that the committees, by and large, the concept and the actual implementation has been going generally well. I think that we have been taking some action, or at least pursuing it diligently and all that. Those are just some top tier things that spring to my mind. That's about it right now.
Thank you. And I encourage people, if you think of something after you are done speaking while someone else is speaking, just throw your ideas into the chat.
I just realized one more thing. The chairs, the leadership has been really good, really well administered committee with, clear agendas on time, plenty of time to review stuff. So I really appreciate both you and Joshua's leadership there.
Thank you. All right, Joshua, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. I feel like in a way we're still hitting our stride. We're kind of figuring out how things work, but we're figuring that out by achieving some things and getting some things done. And I've been liking the way the working group structure has been going, and the sense of camaraderie and collaboration I feel like has been quite nice. That's what I'm feeling these days. We've gotten some things done. We're figuring it out. There's, still a little ways to go, but we're getting somewhere.
Great. Thank you. Deborah?
So I really think that one of the strong suits of this committee is how well it's run. You can plan your time. You really run it effectively and efficiently. we'll forget that word today. And I think that the agenda is well thought out and the pace is really great. I love the way you guys will move things on. So we try to get to the agenda. And I also like the way we can table things when it doesn't happen. I think it's been really effective having smaller working groups who can take up some of the, take the load off of the main group and do work outside of it and just focus on getting the details done here. So I think it's been and it's a great group of people who are really hardworking, and everyone has so much to bring to the table. So.
Great. Thank you. Lisa?
Well, I just, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I have the same feelings. I think, Kenna, you and Joshua we are so lucky to have that you both stepped up to do this role, because you're both really good at it, I think. And I think everybody on the group is, it's a great group of people to work with. I think I'm wondering about, running things a little bit more tight ship as far as time. Like, for instance, as much as
Lisa, I'm just going to interrupt you. So we're doing the first round is just like what's working well, and then we're going to go to the suggestions. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. And I also like the structure and the small groups, and I think every 2 weeks works well. And there's a lot of things more I could say about what are working well, but I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah Gurney.
Thank you. I do agree with all the comments that we've heard so far, but I want to add what I see as a council member is some great efficiency and economy in this group. Consider how large this group is and how you all dialed in and been proactive and informed yourselves, educated yourselves, and also learned about the process. To me, being the beginners on a brand new committee, there's been a great accomplishment with a real economy of effort. It might not feel that way to everybody, but that's what I see, and that's what I would compliment you all on.
Thank you so much. Dina?
I think our time commitment's okay. I wouldn't want to add more meetings. And I too am impressed with our chairs and their facilitation of these meetings. I like having the working groups so we can dive into topics and actually take some action. And in terms of the whole group, I think there's been a lot of development of connections and friendships. So the work we're doing is enjoyable.
Great, thank you. Sonali?
Hi. Ditto to what everybody has shared with leadership and the focus groups. I think in particular, just that a group like this exists to inform the council is a great accomplishment and a success, that we as a community get to work together and inform each other and inform the council. So appreciating all of us for that. And just how we support each other and encourage each other. And yeah, it's really beautiful. So thank you all.
Great, thank you. Diana?
Thanks. Agree with everything I've heard. I have a great respect for the sense of mutual respect and active listening that we see in each of these meetings. And I think this particular exercise underscores that. There's a mutual respect that I think allows everyone to contribute to what have been some really great ideas. I also think that this group is doing really well at developing its skill set for working collaboratively and very effectively with staff. And I know that that's part of the learning curve, and that Carrie contributes to all of that, but that is a real strength in this committee. I also think that this committee is really good at, through the process, which I understand process takes time, but through the process, developing what are really some practical and realistic initiatives and proposals that you bring to council. And then finally, there is, you may not be aware of this, but this committee has earned great respect from the city council. And as a result, when an update comes to the city council, leadership here has been very effective at coordinating that. But when an update comes to the city council, or when an initiative comes to the city council from this group, it's given incredible respect, and you've earned that. So I think all of those are really important strengths for you to take in and understand from kind of a 30,000, height view. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Alex? Are you here, Alex?
Sorry, I was on mute. I
Okay.
think everything that I would say has already been said in some way, shape, or form. And I'm excited to continue with you guys and see how we can continue to improve and be better.
Great. Thank you. Jerry?
First of all, I apologize. I finally figured out the bandwidth problem, so I actually hear all of the words instead of parts of the words. It had to do with a router having some problems at my friend's house. I want to agree with Woody and Joshua, the first comments that were made. First of all, the organizing for the meetings, the leadership has been really effective. And that's really important for almost every committee, to have a good chair organizing things and making sure, in the coordination with staff, goes through the chair in most cases also. So that's really important. I think the working groups, although I objected with us having so many, has been really good. And especially for this reason, inside the working groups, we've been able to leverage other people who are interested, and Tor and Steve and Zeno and others that have joined in. And I want to see if we can find a way to make more use of that in the working groups and kind of advertise that in the future. I thought that was really strong. But those are the major things. And I'll agree with Joshua. This is year one trying to figure out how to do things. And it's not just how the committee does things. It's how staff does things with the committee. It's how the council does things with the committee. It's how the council relies on the committee for certain things, or staff relies on the committee for certain things. Finding out what the role is for this group, which is now a portion of the city, which is always difficult. It's not defined at the state level like a planning commission. It will do this. And so, and the other thing which I found us changing, having done this before, was that this was an advocacy group, and the people who joined were advocates. And it's a policy organization, and making the transition from advocacy, Deborah, you're not the only problem having a problem with English these days, to policy is a difficult transition to occur. And I hope we do more of that going forward as well. So, and I'm glad I fixed my bandwidth problem. So
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry.
And since we can jump in, can I say one last thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, I think it comes from the top down. One thing I really notice in a huge difference of being on so many committees about this group of people is everybody doesn't always disagree, but everybody does it so respectfully and so in honor of each other. That is really amazing to be a part of. Whether you agree or not, you feel completely supported. And I think that's unique to this group.
Thank you. All right, so I want to see if Carrie and or Phoebe wants to give us any input about what they think.
Hannah,
yes.
You really can't see it, but Sonali's hand, her electronic hand.
Oh, yes.
Up.
Thank you. Sonali, yes.
It's been inferred, but I want to explicitly share the appreciation for the staff, but specifically how well informed we are with what's going on in the city. I think that's really important in our understanding of how to be effective. So that's it. Thanks, Woody.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Carrie or Phoebe, do you have anything that you want to point out? We've I think there's been a lot of agreement. I agree with what everyone said too.
Yeah, and so I'll just chip in here. I will say I actually want to echo Jerry and Jerry's comments. They are, yeah, the fact that you guys have all done a really good job of getting yourself up to speed in terms of what and kind of trying to understand how to deal with the Brown Act and those types of things. That does take time and patience to get through. So thank you for that. But I think, yeah, the chairs are extremely well organized. They're extremely easy to work with for me as staff. Wednesday night for my Thursday posting, I usually get the agenda and the packet via Word. I can just real quickly bump in the Zoom information and get it online. And that's been brilliant for me to be able to, take on this extra committee and be able to be here. And then, one of the things that I really appreciate is the expertise of the various members in their specialties. So that's kind of, the working groups and being able to meet with them, whether it's the REACH code or the transportation group. And, Woody was invaluable during the gas station ordinance and in those discussions, and stepping up and being liaisons as your projects go to other committees and making that commitment. I think really does make the committee work well in terms of being an advisory committee, but being able to push things through and make those commitments. So from a city functioning level, I think this is a really highly functioning committee.
That is wonderful to hear. Phoebe, any observations that you want to share?
I think you all have said it all.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so now we're all feeling good. I feel great about what we're doing well, but let's dig in a little bit to what we could improve. So, because nothing is ever perfect. So I'm sure there are things that we've learned along the way that it would be good to share. So we've reordered ourselves on my screen. So I'll be calling you in a different order, starting with Sunali.
I know we worked on the framework and had community input, but I think I wouldn't mind having more, like finding a way to draw community into some of our meetings and have them in that, as well as time for us to have some more discussions about possible solutions, of things, and brainstorm like what problem solution, how we could be innovative in our approach to this situation. I think those are the things that I can think about at the moment. And then I'm glad we're working on the framework. And I'm assuming that the city council is the suggestion's going to be that there's certain protocol that they look at before making any decision, right? Is that the point of it?
I think that we're going to go through like, what could the committee process be doing better? And then we're going to go to a framework discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But that would be okay. Never mind. But thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. I think we all have a little bit of like maybe different ideas, like what does a climate action framework do? So Joshua, what could we be doing better?
Let's see. I'd have to think on it for a little bit, and I don't want to take a long time with that. I feel like in general, we're already working on the things that could be better, which is to say figuring out our process and how the projects go through. And I'm excited to get to the outline things that Alex did. And I feel like we're establishing the formats that we need to be the better tools for the next step forward, and keeping the committee effective and evolving. So I think a little bit more of the camaraderie and the stepping outside now and then could be nice if there was a little bit of a format for the social thing and the brainstorm kind of thing, and the outside inspiration thing are all stuff that I would like to see develop in some fashion. Not to say lots more meetings, but just that as some people have voiced, I don't want to get so into working through the business, which is very compelling, but that we get a little bit less creative about how to move even further forward. So something along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
So I agree with Sonali that I'd like to see more community involvement. And I also feel like, having a stronger community outreach and more participation would be really beneficial. I also think that sometimes I get lost in like all of these ideas we have and things we want to accomplish. And I think reprioritizing and getting them, on a, I don't mean to use this word, but framework where we just have like what our, what our objectives and goals are, and then reprioritizing them, so where we want to focus our energy. I think sometimes when you have a lot of things you're trying to do, you can't really accomplish anything. But if we just check them off the box one by one by one and really get them through, we've talked about, educating people, the community about how to put in solar or whatever all these things are. So I think that would be really, really beneficial. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Well, I think, we all came into this, at least I did, with a kind of a sense of urgency of we got to do something, and I just feel like both Steve and I have been super busy the last few months and have not really brought as much to the table as we would like. So my hope is that we can kind of get a little bit more in gear with in the small groups. It feels like we're at a bit of a churning point, or it's feels like we're not moving ahead very very quickly, with the funding group and even the energy group, and I feel kind of responsible for that. Let's see, as much as I really appreciate the reports from the city council, I do feel like we all have access to watching the meetings. It's kind of like our date night thing to do, which is crazy, but it does take time in the meeting. So I sort of feel mixed about that. It's really nice to get the report, and it does take time. Let's see, what else? Yeah, just feeling a sense of urgency and feeling like I want to work a little harder at everything.
Thank you. Councilmember Gurney.
Yes, following Lisa, thank you for your candor about that, because I have the same concern about taking up people's time when you look to, 10 or 15 minutes. I think it's important that Carrie report and be connected to you, particularly as your staff member. What I wonder is if the group would consider doing one meeting a month for the entire group, because the action and a lot of the actual work is in the small working groups. That's where the opportunity is to discuss and collaborate more and have more camaraderie. So I'm thinking about efficiency again as my earlier remark, and wondering if now might be the time to trust the working groups and look to making the business part of this committee be, say, 1-2 hour meeting a month, rather than 2 1.5 hour meetings. That's what I might want to change.
All right, thank you. Dina.
So I have this sense of urgency like Lisa was talking about, and my wish would be that we were way better than average at pushing things through, whether they're policy or actions or whatever, and better at securing money for the things we do need to, as we see as goals in the framework. And I would like to be better at our interactions with our community, whatever they be.
All right, thank you, Dina. Woody?
Thanks. Yeah, I think I echo a lot of what's been said. There's 3 things I'll point to. The first one for me, big sort of disappointment has been the failing on filling that equity seat. It's been open ever since we launched, and I've made all kinds of efforts to reach out to organizations in the county and individuals and whatnot, and just has not, I have not been successful. We have not been successful in having that. And yeah, these are public meetings, but we don't get much public here. So I echo that sentiment that it would be nice if we had a more robust public participation in these public meetings. The last thing I'll point to is I think we are really pretty good at getting down into the weeds and especially in the committees and wading through our various issues. I think the thing that we might want to do, and maybe this is something we could set a special meeting for or something, it relates to the framework, I think, a bit, which is really crystallizing a vision for what we want Sebastopol to look like in 2030, 2040, 2050. Like, what is it? What would Sebastopol look like or feel like or be like in 10, 20, 30 years? So that's my input. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Woody. Diana?
Thank you. Great suggestions, all of them. I think this committee is at a natural point, and it's reflected in some of the comments we're hearing now. You have to get kind of the full universe of options, back off and kind of get the full inventory, and then really zero in on what the priorities are going to be. And when I look at the proposals that have come forward, I wonder if there's an opportunity to provide some structure to those proposals so that perhaps they could be a little bit more directed when they come to us. The one that comes to mind for me is the electric scooter and bike presentation. If that had come to us more a written summary of the proposal with some options that we could really sink our teeth into, that would have been, for me personally, very useful. I understand that this committee is really about contributing and discussing and engaging, but I'm thinking that as we move forward, having some more directed, more structured proposals might be an opportunity to focus it a little more. That's my only additional comment beyond others that have already been made. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Alex?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would second Diana, what she just said. And just basically, that's part of why I created the proposal project pipeline, is just to like today, which just trying to get more structure to the working group committees or the working groups, because I think part of it is just hard to understand what the process is. And
I'm sorry, Kenna, are others hearing? Because I really can't hear him. So
Okay, I actually can hear him, but I see a lot of blank faces.
is this better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so basically what I was saying is I second what was just said, and creating the project, just some sort of like basic proposal, and having the timeline will really help the working groups, because from my standpoint, we're coming into this committee never really being a part of anything formal from a city or I don't know, city council thing. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly how best to inform the group, and I think just having more structure around that, and that was good feedback to understand exactly what we want to come with. And if there's like a sheet we send in the agenda as a briefing, or like just it isn't really as much about discussion as it is informing, or it's like, I don't know, I guess it just depends on the topic. But I think having more structure around how we have our meetings, and like maybe even having a topic, hey, this is an informational topic, and then there's other topics that, hey, this is more of a discussion topic. I don't know. Anyway, just some thoughts, and I think overall we're doing well though, and I'm excited to move forward.
Great. Thank you, Alex. And Jerry?
Well, Alex was very good. He got to the specifics of the general that I had in mind as well. There were two things I was going to mention. One was, having been on the planning commission, I was lucky to be on the planning commission at the time that we had a number of people with different expertise, and we all relied on, we came to different answers, and we had really good discussion, really good arguments, and had a beer afterwards. I really enjoyed that because I learned a lot from the different people in the planning commission. And I think that's one of the things we should look for in getting members for this committee as well. That is, we identified equity, we identified, other areas. Well, maybe we need to identify people who have particular interest or expertise in areas. And we have architects on the planning commission. I've been on the Sunnyvale Planning Commission. We had no architects. It was really useful having architects on the planning commission in Sebastopol. They can explain, why did we do some of the things that we did? And do we really need to do that going forward? Should we change these things? One of the problems we have, is I think that, as Lisa said, most of the people who joined see the emergency and recognize we have to have the change immediately. But it's not going to happen immediately. And I've been working on this for a long time. We picked opportunistic things as opposed to longer range solutions that would get us into the structure that we need going forward. And I think that's part of what we need to do. Defining the role formally within the city, I think is still casual. I think the city council has a responsibility to formalize the role of the committee so we know precisely what's within our bailiwick and what's not. And the planning commission has that. Other groups have that as well. We need a work plan for the year. This is what we're going to work on. One of the things that was mentioned by a number of you, I was concerned about as well, not a lot of community engagement. I believe that's for two reasons. We're meeting virtually. That's one of the reasons. Now, you would think that make it easier, but I think when you have a place and a time, that more people do show up, especially when the agenda has items on it, which are a little bit more specific. And that's why Alex's comment, I think, was very good. Working with the MTC Advisory Council, this is informational. This one we want a decision on. This is the topic. It comes back a couple of times. It gives the community time to come in and say, I don't like that. By the way, most of the people who will show up are not the ones supporting something. They're the ones going to tell you that you're doing the wrong thing. But that's community engagement. And that's the part of what we want to have. I think getting to in-person meetings is a useful thing for us to do going forward so that people have a place. Hybrid meetings would be even better if we can figure out how to do that. I think hand raising stifles discussion, because I often find we're on a topic, somebody says something and you want to talk about that aspect of the topic and you can't. Wise ass, Woody, wise ass. I saw that. Anyway, so we can't get the give and take, and we get that in the working groups. But it would be nice to have more of that in the committee. You'd get that in person a little bit better, because the chair can then see somebody's really antsy on the seat. Did you want to say something about what so-and-so just said? Let's stay on that part of the topic. And lastly, I think that there should be a formal time when the committee meets with the planning commission, the committee meets with the city council. The planning commission, I was blown away because I don't think, except for dinner, that we ever met with the council once. Working in Sunnyvale at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, sometimes really on a topic that we thought was important enough to the community that the council and the planning commission and maybe the, in that case, sustainability commission also would be interested in. We'd have a joint session and have a discussion on it. So those are the things that I think would make it work better, especially having agendas that have something that will bring out audience, bring out the community, because it's a specific topic. We're still too general, and that's the work plan issue. Sorry, so long, but.
No, helpful, thank you. Carrie, anything you want to weigh in about?
Thank you. This has been enlightening discussion from my perspective as well. I would say, and this is actually now that things are kind of organized, and I'm kind of interested in the, how do we move forward, especially how do we move forward once Phoebe is gone? That's going to leave a big hole in helping to organize this. I think, and this kind of gets into the climate action framework a little bit. She's helping us organize a lot of information, and yeah, how do we fund it? And I'm hoping that that there's some way to work with the funding committee, or for, to help analyze, one of the things that everyone recognizes that there's a huge number of grants out there, and to sort through them all and understand what's competitive, what's going to be way too onerous in terms of either the application requirements or the reporting requirements. I mean, you could spend just as money on staff time reporting requirements and doing the application as you can on a grant. But then there are some grants where it's easy peasy and it's very clear, and you're going to be really competitive, and you submit it, and it's a really great leveraging of funds. It would be great if there's some way that folks in this committee could, whether it's the funding group or someone to help staff go through those, because I think that is part of the, you've gotten to know the community really well, and y'all have some really good expertise on your topics. And I'm sort of hoping to continue that kind of communication, or increase that as we do start looking for funds to do some of the projects that are going to be on the climate action framework.
Great, thank you. Phoebe, any comments that you want to add at this point?
I think they might start getting a little into the next topic. So I don't know if you want to move on to that.
Well, I think we can move on to the next topic. So let's talk about the climate action framework. And I just want to acknowledge that it really would have worked very well to have our project pipeline discussion today in concert with this conversation, but I'm guessing we probably won't get to it. But let's go on to climate action framework. What do we think it's like? How do we see it moving forward? So this is a bigger question. And I'm going to ask Phoebe to talk a little bit about what she sees, and then Carrie and the council members, and then Jerry, because he's been part of a previous committee to produce a document like this, and then let the rest of us weigh in. So Phoebe, you want to start?
Yes, so I will give a sort of brief update on where the framework is at this point to start. I have a draft version. In its current form, it has a sort of summary of the city's progress and status in each category. So transportation, land use, buildings and energy, adaptation, community engagement, city operations. I think that those are them. And there's sort of general goals in each category, like how do we want to be more sustainable, more climate friendly in each of those categories. And then in the appendix, which I'm still working on, there's going to be a sort of spreadsheet of more specific actions. And those actions aren't going to be adopted by council because they need further analysis under the California Environmental Quality Act. They need more funding analysis, all that. So what I sort of see as the next step for the framework and with this committee is sort of Jerry's idea of creating a work plan. So this committee would review the framework and then identify in each quarter what are the action items that the committee wants to work on and move forward for council approval. And that's sort of one way that I see it potentially moving forward. But open to other ideas, and however you want to move it forward as well.
Great. And Phoebe, I know that you sent the draft version to Joshua and I know I haven't had time to look it over yet, and I don't know if Joshua has, but is that something that we'll be able to share with the full committee?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. That was the other part of my update. So yes, I hope to share it with each of the working groups individually starting next week. And so that would be shared in a Word document form, and you would not be able to discuss it with members of any of the other working groups for Brown Act rules, but just for me to get feedback individually from each of the working groups and then incorporate that feedback and bring it back to the full committee either at the May 25th or June 8th committee meeting. And at that point, it would be a publicly available draft and would start getting some community feedback on it. Hoping, depending on how that's going, the draft would be presented to council either at a June or July meeting initially, and then getting additional community input on the framework before a final would go back to council potentially in late July. So that's the time frame I'm looking at.
Great, thank you so much. So Carrie, how do you see this working? You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Phoebe, for that schedule update. And Councilmember Gurney, just so you know, I've been working with Phoebe on the schedule and also with Mary to make sure we've got time on the agendas. I know you're helpful with that earlier, but it's sort of a lot of moving parts. So the climate action framework, to me, it is the roadmap or the stepping stone of going from the sort of really lofty goals, reducing greenhouse gas, adaptation for climate, those types of things, to a much more specific understanding of how we're going to move that forward. And so I think when you look through the climate action framework, as Phoebe noted, the content of the document kind of lays out, here's the different areas, and they're pretty similar to the working groups, if not exactly similar. Transportation, consumption and waste, which is sort of the zero waste component of it, and so forth, and what we've done, where we're at, and then the appendices themselves will start to look at. So here's the types of things that the city should be considering. The document itself may also have, here's how to make these decisions. We do have limited resources, both time, as many committee members discussed earlier, but also funding. Where can we have the most bang for the buck? Where should we be putting what are the most critical pieces where we should be putting our resources? I will note that similar to Petaluma, we are putting the actions themselves, which if you kind of see those as mini projects like the gas station ban, in the appendix. And part of that is because otherwise we would need to do CEQA on all of those if they were actually in the document. The larger goals are in the documents itself, and those potential projects like the microgrids, or, because you'd have to look at the site and what any implications for that. But it will sort of lay out, instead of, oh, we want to reduce greenhouse gas, how are we going to do it? Oh, hey, here's one idea, the gas station ban. That's it. And I don't have any problem with that. It's super easy. But are there other things that we're missing? And this is a way of trying to get all of those, all of that good thought from each of the working groups into a document. And of course, all new ideas are always going to come forward, but how do we make decisions about them, and how do we move forward? It's a way of communicating that to the public and the council and other decision makers, as well as they're looking at their policies. Just in terms of where the city is going, if we didn't have a gas station ban, to note that, the intent is for the city not to keep going through infrastructure, supporting fossil fuel infrastructure. There's a consistency that all of our city policies can start to reflect once this is adopted. And I'm going to stop because I see Phoebe's hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that part of the hope for the working group review in the next couple of weeks is that you all can add your ideas and projects that you're interested in evaluating further to that action item list, so that the framework really reflects what the committee wants to work on next.
Great, thank you.
And I will just say a couple of things when Phoebe mentioned this potentially moving into a work plan. So again, some of it's the structure and how to organize ideas. And Jerry, I don't remember if you were on the planning commission when I started doing the work plan with the commission. Okay. And so this is, the planning commission is responsible for implementation of the general plan for a lot of the programs in the general plan. And so you sort of get this question, where the heck do we start with this? Well, the general plan was adopted before I got here, and they did a huge amount of work on updating the zoning ordinance to reflect all of the housing policies and some of the other policies, the formula business ordinance that supports the community vitality and those types of things. When we got done with that, about 6 months in, when I was here, I took the planning commission through and we developed, okay, well, here's the rest of these, what else is in the general plan? There's a lot of other policies, and the general plan kind of already organizes them as a tier 1 or a tier A, a tier B, and a tier C in terms of a sort of 20-year build out time frame. But we went through and we said, okay, here's where, these are these are the top priorities. What do we do next, and organize them? And this, what you're looking at here, is actually an update that I updated for planning commission meeting a couple months ago. Okay, we adopted these in 2019. The local hazard mitigation plan, as you all know, it's at FEMA right now, and it's going to be adopted by council in a couple of months. We did the impact fee study, we got that done, and vacation rental ordinance that was delayed. We had the moratorium and then COVID. So we're starting that in May, actually. We started at a staff level just now, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but these are all related to, if you look at these closely, other than a couple of initiatives in here, like, always cleaning up your zoning ordinance, but they are related to the general plan items. And so if you look at those framework potential actions, not all of them are going to be done. Some of them might be, consider doing or investigate and see if this is viable. But we can then start to take those pieces and like I said, what's the priority? What should the city be looking at, first round in each of these areas, or however it works out, putting them on a work plan and helping to, in this case, I think it helps to focus the planning commission and hopefully city council in terms of what the planning commission is working on as a communication document, because we brought this to the city council and they approved it. We're now revising it now that we've done a bunch of stuff, and it'll go back to council for that same communication. But you can use that as a tool to communicate with the other bodies as well, as part of the framework document and how it moves forward past when Phoebe is here as an option.
Great, thank you. Either of the council members want to weigh in? Anything to add to what Carrie said, or Sarah?
The only thing I would offer is that until we see the document and have a sense of, once we see the document, have a sense of what it is looking like in draft form, especially with committee participation, then I'm sure that Sarah and I can contribute to the discussion. But in terms of the process that I've seen so far, cool, thumbs up. It's wonderful engagement, going from the big picture to the smaller picture with priorities and goals and a possible work plan. Sounds great to me.
Me too. I want to appreciate Phoebe, all the work you've done, and Carrie for your support for Phoebe, as well as Tanya assisting from the RCPA. I'm glad to hear the explanation that the actions are in the appendix, and why, because I'm really interested in the actions. And I probably shouldn't say any more, because Diana's right. We need to hear this with what comes up and review it, and then make our public deliberations. Thank you very much for all that is being considered.
Thank you. Jerry, do you have anything to add?
What kind of a stupid question is that? First of all, my experience was this. The city council in Sunnyvale established a committee to both update the general plan and to write the climate action plan. And that committee was set up temporarily. And that's how we got around, I believe, the Brown Act. And each one of the people on the committee had a role representing portions of the community and the interest of that portion of the community, you know, commercial, industrial, residential, et cetera, and students. We actually met for 3 years to do what Phoebe's doing. And we had not only staff to support us who weren't experts, but the council had allocated more money than this council could ever afford to allocate for consultants who had done multiple climate action plans. And so we had that benefit. Our discussion and the working process was different than here. That entire committee worked on a working process, and each meeting we had, and we had one a week for 3 years, there's a topic and portion for us to work through and doing the outline. Now, what Phoebe has as the outline sounds very close to the outline we had. And Carrie has found a clever way of making it so you don't have to have an EIR by moving the actions into the appendix. Nobody else had considered that because, Sarah, you're right. The most interesting portion when you're done with it is what are the actions and which ones should we do first and what's the impact of each action. I'm hoping we'll have that. One of the things that I think we are missing from here, and it doesn't have to be us, and unfortunately, this committee was set up before that framework was in place. Otherwise, all of us could be sitting there and helping out and giving input very directly and collaboratively in a room together or in a session together to help Phoebe along. Because there were a lot of changes that occurred as a result of that kind of input. It's not just getting citizenry that has no introduction to it to sit down and give their input, but rather people that recognize all the trade-offs after we worked on it for several months and find out what's going to work and what's not going to work. If we can find some place where we can get a small group together that maybe the council identifies to sit down with Phoebe for an extended period of time to go through it, just to hear how it all fits together, that works. When I did the climate action plan in Sunnyvale, I actually went around to each community organization and I gave presentations on what we had so far and why we got to where we were and heard the objections. Some we addressed and others, the emphasis is on different syllable. So that was it. And great. So we'll get to the working groups. That'll be one way for us to do a review. We should spend a lot of time, and we should have at least, if we're going to have it as a public meeting with us, a meeting more than an hour and a half to do this, a plan on a long meeting. And maybe if we can do it, I don't know if we're doing any in person yet, but make it obvious to the community this is a big thing and have people come in, be able to see the document and hear the discussion and participate in the discussion. So that's my input.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else want to weigh in with either comments or questions about the framework and how we see it working and how it's moving forward? Don't all jump at once. All right. Okay. Well, Lisa.
I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to meeting with you, Phoebe, and I think having a kind of a work plan is just what we need. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, this has been go ahead, Sonali.
I strongly agree with the latter part, especially of what Jerry suggested, and really having a discussion and weighing in and going to different organizations and sharing it with them, if that would be ideal. As well as I thought we were also giving not only suggestions, but a lens, like looking glasses was the framework, that every city decision was made in consideration of certain aspects that addressed climate specifically. So I hope that we can incorporate that part into it as well.
Sorry to jump in real fast, but that was really an important point that somebody should have made earlier, Sonali.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Phoebe, I just want to again thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing on this and the leadership that you're showing. And I think everyone that I can see on my screen would be probably happy to write you a glowing letter of recommendation for any jobs you're applying to right now. So I just really appreciate the input from the whole group about ideas of how to move us forward and how to improve our processes to achieve our goals, define and achieve our goals. So I think this has been a really productive session, at least for me, and understanding, how we can optimize our working process. So now we have 15 minutes left, and I don't think it's really time to review the project pipeline document unless, everyone's just like, it looks perfect. So I'm going to, again, save that for another meeting, unfortunately, but feel free in the meantime to use it as a guideline, to use the draft document as a guideline, and for any projects that you are developing in your working groups. And with that in mind, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, just clarifying, that's the document that I worked on.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we can get city council feedback on that. Just that just might help guide it along, because I think that was what Diana was talking about, and I think, at least in some way, shape, or form. And I think that if we could get a more clear direction from the city council about the general outline, I think they could use that for other committees too, potentially. I just think it would be helpful for us to understand, and that way when we present it to the group, it would be more in alignment with what they want to, or how they see it should work. Just a thought.
Do the council members present today have any comments that you could provide at this time, or yeah, go ahead.
I don't have any comments. I'm wondering, Carrie, if you think that's a worthy agenda item for the whole council, you and Joshua and Kenna or this group might consider if you want to ask for that agendized.
It's a good question, or whether that's part of so we do have the next update to council on June 7th. That might stretch beyond, the 15 minutes, but I think it'd be helpful for the CSU members to be able to put it in context in that.
It's a great idea. Go ahead, Joshua.
I just might suggest that we're still at a preliminary draft place with this document, and that level of formality may not be required just yet. And yet, if Sarah and Diana, as members of the committee, felt inclined to skim those and maybe email feedback to Alex, that perhaps we can bring an extra round of stuff to the next time we get to discuss it in this again, or in this meeting.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to take a look at any documents. I have not seen this one. I apologize if it was sent out.
It's the packet from this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Sure, I'd be happy to take a look at that and give some input. Just please let me know to whom I should direct that, maybe just to Kenna and Joshua.
Joshua, me, and Alex, please.
Okay. But I do think, so I'd be happy to do that. That could start a conversation. But I do think that the question really has to do with what the committee wants from city council in terms of input and engagement on formalities. But I can certainly give my perspective.
Yeah, and I think in the context of a CIC update to come to council, because that can include sort of that back and forth. I have this on my screen. What else does city council consider when you're making budget decisions, or, I know you don't do directly staff allocation decisions, but in some ways when you authorize something, staff has to try to figure out, well, and I know my department, that work plan that I have at the planning commissions, because I can't do everything. And once you start a project, you can't put it on hold to go do something else, or you're never going to get anything done. And so I kind of hold the planning commission to that work plan. And it's like, yeah, I know, Paul, I know, I know you want me to fix this section of the Muni code, but I can write an interpretation and that will get us through until when we do have time to do it. These are our priorities right now. And so, you know, in terms of council, is this helpful to you, and whether or not to say yay or nay and commit funding, and with funding, you know, the staff time and resources, whatever they be, and if there's an outcome, be ready to adopt it, like the gas station ban, if the CAC brings something forward to the council.
So looking at this, you know, this looks like from just my review of it, like it has some key elements that would be very useful to, I would think, the Climate Action Committee discussion, and also to the City Council. The piece that is not here, and perhaps there's a conscious decision to not include that here, is recommendations, or a list of recommendations or alternative outcomes. It may be that this proposal is really, hey, here's the proposal. But in some instances, there will be alternatives. Keep in mind that the City Council discusses these items, and so very often you'll want to provide the City Council with some options. But otherwise, just looking at it, I think it provides the information that the City Council would be interested in receiving.
Okay, great. Jerry. Oh, I see Sarah Gurney's hand. Oh, now I see lots of hands.
Sorry, I was trying to get the screen so I could unmute. This looks a lot like something that, again, Sunnyvale had. And each year, each one of the various committees and commissions of the city, as well as people outside the city, came along and would submit on a form that looks a lot like this, but there's some elements missing, study topics for the next year. And that's part of the budget process, that it preceded the budget process each year. What will we study this year coming? The study process then determined what were the projects that would follow after that, and council and planning commission might then initiate those projects, because you'd already know what the funding would be and everything else and why you would do it. And the study is what filled all that out. And I think, and Alex can answer this, that may be the reason why he doesn't have a recommendation, because essentially that's what this is talking about. What should we focus on next? And why would we focus on that in our city? And what do we think it will cost us to focus on that? I mean, that's basically what you submitted when you put in. And for instance, for me, one of the items that I put in, many I put in, the City Council didn't pick up on. One was, don't you think we should create a CCA, which became Silicon Valley Clean Energy? And I spent a lot of time doing the study work on that. So that process worked really well. And I think that's where Alex was going. He can answer that when.
So, sure, we're actually going to discuss this at a future meeting. I think we're running out of time today. And so we're just asking the council members to send their feedback to Alex for further development, for us to have the discussion of this document at a future meeting. Thank you, Sarah. Alex, was there something you wanted to say before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify to ask. It's good to get feedback on the project proposal. I think that's definitely important. I think maybe more so feedback on the pipeline, or like the kind of the steps, or the timeline of what we see an idea or a project looks like through City Council, and how it might transition into something that the staff works on, or how we collaborate with the staff. And the project proposal is part of that. And I believe that document is in the packet from the agenda as well. I think for me, that's the part that I get hung up on, is not quite understanding the process. And there may not be a clear one, just because every project is different. But if I just figured it would be a good idea to do an outline. And that's why I was asking for the City Council's input, because they're obviously way more experienced and have done a ton of projects. They may be able to provide some very valuable feedback. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any working groups? We've got 5 minutes. So are there any working group report outs that you want to make? Alex, is your hand still up? I'll move on to Dina.
Okay, with the education outreach group, I brought this up last time, and so I want to keep planting this seed. if there is a climate action type newsletter, would each working group take a turn and write up something they're working on or something they want to educate or, something they want to communicate to the community? So keep thinking about that in case, if we do some sort of newsletter, we need information for it. And this would be a way to provide information from your working group. And just Joshua, you can add anything to this, but something happened today that I hadn't had a chance to tell Joshua about, the compost giveaway that happened last Sunday. We had to kind of think quickly on our feet because we were delivered less compost than we expected. It turned out okay for the most part. But the part I found out today was there was somebody that wrote one negative comment, I guess, in Nextdoor. I don't read negative comments. And I was told their negative comment resulted in a lot of people writing something positive. And we also get positive verbal comments with people with this event, and we get positive emails in our working group email. So it was interesting that the people popped up in Nextdoor, and some of them in their positive reply to the negative guy apparently expressed some sort of interest in how they could get more involved. And so that is really interesting lesson, I think, that we have a community building event and people feel really good interacting and helping each other at this event. And that leads to some of them wanting to be more involved, which I think then we need to think of some ways to draw them in. Did you want to add anything, Joshua?
Yeah.
I was just going to report a little bit on the event that we have another round of the compost giveaway for those who missed it. We got less delivered than we expected and had to scramble on that, but made some changes to the maximum amount of compost we were giving people and finesse the traffic flow so people were turning off their motors most of the time. And overall, it went really well. Again, we're figuring on doing 2 more sort of at late summer or early fall, kind of that winter gardening season. And while we're starting to recognize we could do lots and lots and lots of these, we don't really want to spend all our energy on that, nor do we want people to feel too complacent about getting free compost from the city. So just trying to find a good middle ground where most people are super stoked about it. And there's always some complaints, but by and large, it seems like most people are really glad to be involved.
Great. Thank you. Deborah, and then we're going to move on quickly. So
yeah, this is really quick. I just wanted to give an update on the social media part on our working group, which is the relaunch Sebastopol team is doing a social media for visitors. And so I talked to the woman who's spearheading that, and she is agreeable and excited to do one for residents. So I think we just need to table our whole piece of that and let's see what they're going to do. And I'll keep in contact with them and maybe we can revisit it in a couple of months. But I'd rather do one cohesive thing than have all these little pieces all over. So we can table that one for now.
So we're going to take that off. We had it on agenda.
Yeah, because I think we just should sit back and see what they do. And I mean, I can give you a little update if you want on the agenda, but like 60 seconds, because it's going to be, let's wait and see what they do so we can be cohesive.
Perfect. Woody, did Woody leave? Woody's gone. So that's so much for legislative updates. Chair reports, really, we just had the compost event and the great success of that. I was so impressed. I was so happy that I finally got to not work on a day we were having one. On the next agenda, we have the REACH codes discussion. So I think that's going to take up our whole agenda. Jerry.
Yeah, the only hang up with that is, I have an MTC meeting, and so far the 2-hour MTC meeting, which starts at 1:30 on the same day each month, has always been a 5-hour MTC meeting. So I may not make the next meeting also.
So would we want to move the micro mobility discussion to next time and put the reach codes on the 25th?
I think that's not a bad idea. I did contact Steve and asked him what happened in the meeting last time, because I got cut off then too. And one of the questions you all had was about how the solar works with, I think it's part 11, that's specified in part 11 of the Title 24. And I found several paragraphs that talk about it, and I'd like to do some more digging if Steve's willing to do digging as well. Phoebe sent us a little bit on that, but I want to get the exact formulation so I can report back on it. It absolutely is covered, and it is absolutely different than ours. It's much more refined, which I discovered when I figured out sizing for my place. And I want to cover that, so we might include that. You might drop that out of our code, make things simpler.
Great, thank you. So we'll talk project pipeline and micromobility next time, and reach codes on the 25th. And the review of action items for today is city council members are going to weigh in on the project pipeline, both documents that Alex sent out that were attached to the meeting packet today. And then the chairs have to go through all these comments and work on things like refining our agenda process, and maybe making a work plan and looking into some kind of long brainstorming summit meetings, community engagement event. So thank you so much for coming today, everyone. And this meeting is adjourned until May 11th.
Thank you.